Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Hope y'all having a great day. And on Monday, I did my power conference realignment. So I figured I'd do my mid majors or group of whatever conferences realignment in this video. That way you guys can see where I have some of the lesser known FBS Division One programs. So with no further ado, let's get into um the conference realignment. Starting off with the American, which I'm gonna keep the same conferences um as in real life, just moving around certain teams. So in my American, I have Akron, which I know is a max school, but we're trying to keep it to 10 teams, as I said in the Power Conference video. So we are moving some teams around that aren't in these conferences or never were in these conferences to make it work for 10 teams. But hey, if you want to, um, put other teams, like if you want to make it more in each conference, I get that, but I'm strictly doing 10. So it'll be Akron, Buffalo, the two newest members to the MAC, which is why I'm taking them out of the MAC. Um, then it'd be um, ECU, who is currently in the American. Actually, it'd be Charlotte actually before ECU, but both schools in the American right now, so keeping them there. And Memphis. Um, then um, then who would be next? Let's look around. South Florida, Temple, ooh, UAB, UCF, who I'm pushing down, just because they don't make sense in any really power conference, in my opinion. So, and then UConn as my 10th team. It just makes sense. Like, 8 of the 10 schools in this conference either are or were members of the American, and then Akron and Buffalo making sense geographically. Like Memphis and UAB are like the westernmost members, but it's mostly an East Coast conference. So it just makes the most sense um to do it this way. So moving on to the next conference, which will be Conference USA, which will have some distinct changes from real life. We're taking out both Delaware and um, Missouri State, along with moving both Sacramento State and North Dakota State down just because there's too many teams. And even though Missouri State had a really good first year in the FBS, we're moving them down. So it'll be Florida Atlantic and FIU, keeping the Florida schools together. Then it would be Jacksonville State and James Madison, who I'm taking out of the Sun Belt. Which I know people are gonna be like, what? But I mean, they're a newer member to both the FBS and the Sun Belt, and they make more sense in this conference. Um, that'd be Kennesaw State, Liberty, ooh, Marshall. Oh, yes, just like James Madison, putting them in Conference USA. Um, Middle Tennessee, Old Dominion, and then Sam Houston, right? Yep. It's a combination of current Conference USA members and then just some Sunbelt schools. and FAU was in the American. That kind of makes sense. Like JMU, Marshall, and Old Dominion, in my opinion, don't really make sense because like it's Virginia schools in West Virginia, which aren't really that close to the Sun Belt, so they just make more sense in this conference. Houston's like the very, very far member. You got Middle Tennessee and Kennesaw State, even Jacksonville State, that are close enough to where it makes sense. I think it's a good 10-team conference. You have, current Conference USA members, like I said, and then there's some other schools that I think make geographical sense. And that's really it. Then we are going to do the MAC, which is basically going to be what the MAC has always been, just without Akron and Buffalo. So it'll be Ball State, Bowling Green, Central Michigan, Eastern Michigan, Kent State, Miami of Ohio, Ohio University, here, Riad, Lido, Eastern Michigan, and then we're missing one other school. Be NIU, right? So yeah, that is my 10-team MAC. 10, well, NIU is not a current member, but 10 current or former members who all came in, you know, at like we're the first 10 members. Marshall was actually a member of the MAC. If you wanted to put them in and take NIU out, I wouldn't hate it. But these are 10 schools that have been in the MAC, are in the MAC, that, can keep MACtion alive. Adding UMass and now Sacramento State, just it feels weird having those schools in a conference that is supposed to be like Midwestern, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois, like those states. It just feels weird to have a school in Massachusetts and California in a conference like that. These are the 10-team max, and I think makes perfect sense for um the conference. And I actually realized that Sam Houston actually isn't in my um they aren't in my Conference USA because it's actually Western Kentucky. Sam Houston are gonna put in a different conference that I'm resurrecting that you'll find out a little bit later. So yeah, Western Kentucky, not Sam Houston, is the 10th member of my Conference USA. But on to the Mountain West. We'll break up some schools that have been or are currently in the Mountain West, but it's the 10 for current members, or the 10 first members that I didn't use in my power conferences. So it'd be Air Force, Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, Hawaii. I mean, three of those schools are in the Mountain West, but all were not founding members, but all were stalwarts in the conference. There's a reason they're in the pack now. Then it'd be Nevada, New Mexico, San Diego State. Then it'd be UNLV, and Wyoming, which I know um knocks out like San Jose State, which makes more geographical sense. Splits up New Mexico and New Mexico State, but they've never really been in the same conference for a while, so it kind of just makes sense. Um, I think that those are like the only two schools that you'd have a case for, and Utah State, which obviously makes a lot of sense. But those were like the 10 first, or the 10 members when you like look at who like joined when. Those were the 10 members that aren't in power conferences now that make sense. And you have rivalries that have been in the Mountain West for a while. You have 10 schools that just make sense in the Mountain West for what I'm going to be doing. Next up, we're going to do the Sun Belt, which will be having a lot of changes happen to it because there's a lot of schools that I'm taking out. We'll be in a different conference. So it'll be App State, Arkansas State, Coastal, Georgia Southern, and Georgia State, um, Louisiana. Then it'd be South Alabama, Texas State, Troy. See, what's there? Yeah, this is my 10 team match. I know, other schools could make, or no, it's not Texas State actually. It's not Texas State. It's here, it's Southern Miss, Sunbelt. I mean, other schools just make sense geographically, historically, and just seems like a good 10-team Sun Belt. Like you have App State and Coastal Carolina in that sort of northern branch. You have Arkansas State and Louisiana and Southern Miss in like the more western part. And then you got or in ULM, then you got Troy, South Alabama, the Georgia schools. It just makes sense for these schools, in my opinion, it makes sense for all these schools to be in the Sun Belt, all historically in the Sun Belt, even though some schools have joined a lot later than some other members. So if you wanted to like put Texas State or Louisiana Tech, some other school in the Sun Belt, I wouldn't hate it, but this is what I would have. And my final mid-major conference would be the WAC. Yeah, bringing back the WAC. It would consist of plenty of schools that were in the WAC and some other schools that, so it'd be Louisiana Tech, was probably the furthest eastern member of the conference. But Louisiana Tech, Mexico State, North Texas, who taking out of the American to put in a conference they make more sense in. Um, it'd be San Jose State, Sam Houston, Texas State, Tulsa, Utah State, UTEP, and UTSA. It just makes sense. You got Texas schools, San Jose, New Mexico, Louisiana, Oklahoma, like Utah. It's spread out across plenty of the western part of America. And I think it does make sense. Like you could say why wouldn't you like put Utah State and San Jose State in the Mountain West and then take out like New Mexico and Air Force? So that way the conference makes more geographical sense. And I wouldn't hate you. I wouldn't hate that idea. And maybe if you guys want me to do this like each year, or maybe, later this summer, if you want me to do like a different version of this, I could and have those changes. But right now, that would be my whack. I think it makes sense. And then since I didn't do the independence in my last video, I figured I would do it now, which would be Army, Navy, Notre Dame, and independence. Notre Dame obviously keeping their independence, not going to force them to be in a conference if they don't want to. If in the future they say they want to join a conference, then I could move things around in my power conferences to make it work, but they'll be an independent. Army and Navy just makes sense. Like, since they both now joined the American, because Navy's been there for over a decade, Army now joined in 2024, it has kind of changed the Army Navy game because now with the two of them, possibly playing to win a conference title, it does kind of change up the dynamic because the conference championship game from the former Army Navy, so like it's kind of an extra game they play after the season. So moving them to independence, but I could easily like put them in the American, move Akron and Buffalo to like another conference, and then UMass. They just don't really fit in any of these other conferences. Like you could say the MAC or maybe American with UConn or maybe Conference USA to give them a, I guess, northernmost school in that conference, but they just don't really make sense. They're not really that great, so I just figured push them back to independence and yeah. So these are my mid-major college football conferences. You know, balancing regionality, history, um, and current conferences to make these. And I think I did a pretty good job. But you guys can let me know down in the comments what you would change. You know, if you want me to do this, maybe next year or this summer, I could change some things up and add more teams to conferences, move teams around, have them make sense. But hope you guys enjoy the video. Hope you guys like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. But until then, hope you have a great day and bye.